Hello. Ooh, good evening, y'all. I just made it home. Look, I just made it home, and I didn't want to go nowhere but on this chair to hit record so that I can do this live, because the second I get into I can relax mode, the second that switch is flipped, this live would have been in danger of not happening today. So just, I had to keep it going. We are in day 72. That's how much I had to keep it going, cause like we're not gonna stop at day 72, Actually, I'm gonna make my little mini goal day 75. Why not? Why not round it out? We still like the big goal is 100 days. But mini goal is 3 days away. Look at that. Surprise. Okay. We're reading Judges. We're reading Judges 6 through 8. And then Psalm 72. Yeah. I want to say I remember what happened last time. Oh, I think it was one of the judges and Deborah went to go fight and rescued Israel, and then after they won their victory by this woman running a spike through the head of the leader of the commander, army commander, while he was sleeping, she runs a tent spike through his head and kills him, and so they get this victory, right? And in doing so, Deborah and Balak or something, I can't remember his name. They get angry with Asher and Reuben and Gad, and they're like, "Why didn't you come join us when we called? Why didn't you join the battle? You stayed home and you waited." And so I don't know what their anger really plays out as, but it just I think they cursed. They ended up cursing those 3 tribes. So the devotional video today is about biblical narrative, plot and biblical narrative. And it goes in and it says, an important part of reading biblical narratives is learning how to understand the nature of the plot, how stories are arranged into a pattern of conflict and resolution. In this video, we'll see how ignoring the sequence of the plot can lead to distorted interpretation of biblical stories. We'll also explore how grasping the multi-layered nature of the narrative can help you see the unified story that leads to Jesus. We've placed this video here in the reading plan to help you see the life of Gideon more accurately. So Gideon's one of the judges that God raises. And then they go into like more context in the video about his character and the narrative, the plot behind his whole journey, and how it's not about getting this confused about like the plot's about discernment, and one of God's chosen trying to discern God's will and yada yada yada. But that's not necessarily the case if you're paying attention to certain behaviors, characteristics, settings. You start to realize that the plot is more about how God uses these, what do we call them? Faithless. I don't want to call them faithless 100% because that's not really what they were, but like weak of character. And he raises them up, and how far he will go in to do so. Y'all can watch that The video link is in the description and it's there for you to go rummage, go see if it's gonna help you understand more about the, the Bible itself. I like that I'm doing this first read through, just reading through it and not really trying to demand so much of myself, but there is definitely more I want to be able to do in terms of okay, I'm gonna read through this again so that I can start mapping things out. Anyway, we're at Judges 6. Gideon becomes Israel's judge. The Israelites did evil in the Lord's sight, so the Lord handed them over to the Midianites for 7 years. The Midianites were so cruel that the Israelites made hiding places for themselves in the mountains, caves, and strongholds. Whenever the Israelites planted their crops, marauders from Midian, Amalek and the people of the east would attack Israel, camping in the land and destroying crops as far away as Gaza. They left the Israelites with nothing to eat, taking all the sheep, goat, cattle, and donkey. These enemy hordes, coming with their livestock and tents, were as thick as locusts. They arrived on droves of camels, too numerous to count. And they stayed until the land was stripped bare. So Israel was reduced to starvation by the Midianites. Then the Israelites cried out to the Lord for help. When they cried out to the Lord because of Midian, the Lord sent a prophet to the Israelites. He said, "This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. I brought you up out of slavery in Egypt. I rescued you from the Egyptians and from all who oppressed you. I drove out your enemies and gave you their land. I told you, I am the Lord your God. You must not worship the gods of the Amorites in whose land you now live. But you have not listened to me." Then the angel of the Lord came and sat beneath the gate tree of Ophrah, which belonged to Joash of the clan of Abiezer. Gideon, son of Joash. I'm going to say Joash from now. Joash was threshing wheat at the bottom of the winepress to hide the grain from the Midianites. The angel of the Lord appeared to him and said, "Mighty hero, the Lord is with you." So here's one thing else. Every time God finds these people, they're doing something. They're putting in the work somehow. So he's threshing wheat at the bottom of the winepress to hide grain from the Midianites. The angel of the Lord appeared to him and said, "Mighty hero, the Lord is with you." Sir Gideon replied, "If the Lord is with us, why has all this happened to us? And where are all the miracles our ancestors told us about? Didn't they say the Lord brought us up out of Egypt? But now the Lord has abandoned us and handed us over to the Midianites." See, now you biting at the Lord, but you're not gonna check your own people and be like, "Oh, why did the Lord abandon us?" Well, I see that the Lord has abandoned us because we were disobedient people. And so he handed us over to the Midianites. Then the Lord turned to him and said, "Go with the strength you have and rescue Israel from the Midianites. I am sending you." "But Lord," Gideon replied, "how can I rescue Israel? My clan is the weakest of the whole tribe of Manasseh, and I am the least in my entire family." The Lord said to him, "I will be with you, and you will destroy the Midianites as if you were fighting against one man." Gideon replied, "If you are truly going to help me, show me a sign to prove it is really the Lord speaking to me." Don't go away until I come back and bring you my offering." He answered, "I will stay here until you return." Is the angel of the Lord and the Lord the same person? The angel of the Lord appeared before him. Is the angel of the Lord and the Lord the same person? Like, is that the same? Is it the Lord just taking the shape of an angel? Like, are these the same people? Okay. So, first I need to highlight that Gideon was out here in these fields when he is called. Right? He's threshing. There we go. No, not that one. This one. Note. Working when called. And then, well, I'll just skip the rest of that. But then the Lord replied, "How can I rescue Israel?" Right. Yeah, we got to do that. So then I really want to know if the angel of the Lord and the Lord are the same people. But we'll skip that. It's cold in here. He answered. Right. So now we are at Judges 6:19. Gideon hurried home. He cooked a young goat, and with a basket of flour, he baked some bread without yeast. Then, carrying the meat in a basket and the broth in a pot, he brought them out and presented them to the angel who was under the great tree. The angel of God said to him, "Place the meat and the unleavened bread on this rock and pour the broth over it." And Gideon did as he was told. Then the angel of the Lord touched the meat and the bread with the tip of the staff in his hand, and fire flamed up from the rock and consumed all he had brought. And the angel of the Lord disappeared. Right. It's funny because, like, this is Gideon's offering, but they don't even know how to offer things anymore. Like, it's like, that's not the rules of offering. He cooked this goat. He butchered the goat. He made the broth. He got the unleavened bread right, but other than that, they don't even know how to make these. Well, I mean, offerings and sacrifices are different. Okay. Well, we'll move on. We're not gonna harp on the offering. Under right, and so then he disappeared. When Gideon realized that it was the angel of the Lord, he cried out, "Oh, sovereign Lord, I'm doomed! I have seen the angel of the Lord face to face." "It is all right," the Lord replied. "Do not be afraid. You will not die." But Gideon built an altar to the Lord there and named it Yahweh Shalom, which means the Lord is peace. The altar remains in Ophrah in the lands of the clan of Abizar to this day. That night the Lord said to Gideon, "Take the second bull from your father's herd, the one that is 7 years old. Pull down your father's altar to Baal, and cut down the Asherah pole standing beside it. Then build an altar to the Lord your God here on this hilltop sanctuary, laying the stones carefully. Sacrifice the bull as a burnt offering on the altar using as fuel the wood of the Asherah pole you cut down. So Gideon took 10 of his servants and did as the Lord commanded. But he did it at night because he was afraid of the other members of his father's household and the people of the town. Early the next morning, as the people of the town began to stir, someone discovered that the altar of Baal had been broken down and that the Asherah pole beside it had been cut down. In their place a new altar had been built, and on it were the remains of a bull that had been sacrificed. The people said to each other, "Who did this?" And after asking around and making a careful search, they learned that it was Gideon, the son of Joash. "Bring out your son," the men of the town demanded of Joash. "He must die for destroying the altar of Baal and for cutting down the Asherah pole." But Joash shouted to the mob that confronted him, "Why are you defending Baal? Will you argue his case? Whoever pleads his case will be put to death by morning. If Baal truly is God, let him defend himself and destroy the one who broke down his altar." From then on, Gideon was called Jerubbaal, which means "let Baal defend himself." Jerubbaal. Okay. Because he broke down Baal's altar. Gideon asked for a sign. Soon after, the armies of Midian, Amalek, and the people of the east formed an alliance against Israel and crossed the Jordan, camping in the valley of Jezreel. Then the Spirit of the Lord clothed Gideon with power. He blew a ram's horn as a call to arms, and the men of the clan of Abiezer came to him. He also sent messengers throughout Manasseh, Asher, Zebulun, Naphtali, summoning their warriors, and all of them responded. Then Gideon said to God, "If you truly are going to use me to rescue Israel as you promised, prove it to me in this way. I will put a wool fleece on the threshing floor tonight. If the fleece is wet with dew in the morning, but the ground is dry, then I will know that you are going to help me rescue Israel as you promised." And that is just what happened. When Gideon got up early the next morning, he squeezed the fleece and wrung out a whole bowl full of water. Then Gideon said to God, "Please don't be angry with me, but let me make one more request. Let me use the fleece for one more test. This time, let the fleece remain dry while the ground around it is wet with dew." So that night, God did as Gideon asked. The fleece was dry in the morning, but the ground was covered with dew. Judges 7. Gideon defeats the Midianites. So Jerubbaal, this is Gideon, and his army got up early and went as far as the spring of Harod. The armies of Midian were camped north of them in the valley near the hill of Moreh. The Lord said to Gideon, "You have too many warriors with you. If I let all of them fight the Midianites, the Israelites will boast to me that they saved themselves by their own strength. Therefore, tell the people, whoever is timid or afraid may leave this mountain and go home." So 22,000 of them went home, leaving only 10,000 who were willing to fight. But the Lord told Gideon, "There are still too many. Bring them down to the spring, and I will test them to determine who will go with you and who will not." When Gideon took his warriors down to the water, the Lord told them, "Divide the men into two groups. And one group put all those who cup water in their hands and lap it up with their tongue like dogs. And the other group put all those who kneel down and drink water with their mouths in the spring. Only 300 men drank from their hands. All the others got down on their knees and drank with their mouths in the spring. The Lord told Gideon, "With these 300 men, I will rescue you and give you victory over the Midianites. Send all the others home." So Gideon collected the provisions and ram's horns of the other warriors and sent them home. But he kept the 300 men with him. The Midianite camp was in the valley just below Gideon. That night the Lord said, "Get up, go down to the Midianite camp, for I have given you the victory over them. But if you are afraid to attack, go down to the camp with your servant Purah. Listen to what the Midianites are saying, and you will be greatly encouraged. Then you will be eager to attack." So Gideon took Purah and went down to the edge of the enemy camp. The armies of Midian, Amalek, and the people of the east settled in the valley like a swarm of locusts. Their camels were like grains of sand on the seashore, too many to count. Gideon crept up just as a man was telling his companion about a dream. The man said, "I had this dream. And in this dream, a loaf of barley bread came tumbling down into the Midianite camp. It hit a tent, turned it over, and knocked it flat." His companion answered, "Your dream can mean only one thing. God has given Gideon, son of Joash the Israelite, victory over Midian and all its allies." When Gideon heard the dream and its interpretation, he bowed in worship before the Lord. Then he returned to the Israelite camp and shouted, "Get up, for the Lord has given you victory over the Midianite hordes." He divided the 300 men into 3 groups and gave each man a ram's horn and a clay jar with a torch in it. Then the man said to them, "Keep your eye on me. When I come to the edge of the camp, do just as I do. As soon as I and those with me blow the ram's horn, blow your horns too, all around the entire camp, and shout, 'For the Lord and for Gideon.'" He need to have that. He need to have that part in. He didn't need to. But whatever. "For the Lord and for Gideon." It was just after midnight, after the changing of the guard, when Gideon and the 100 men with him reached the edge of the Midianite camp. Suddenly they blew their ram's horns and broke their clay jars. Then all 3 groups blew their horns and broke their jars. They held the blazing torches in their left hands and the horns in their right. They all shouted, "A sword for the Lord and for Gideon!" Each man stood at his position around the camp and watched as all the Midianites rushed around in a panic, shouting as they ran to escape. When the 300 Israelites blew their ram's horns, the Lord caused the warriors in the camp to fight against each other with their swords. Those who were not killed fled to places as far away as Beth Shittah, near Zererah, and to the border of Abel Meholah, near Tabith. Then Gideon sent for the warriors of Naphtali, Asher, and Manasseh, who joined in chasing the army of Midian. Gideon also sent messengers throughout the hill country of Ephraim, saying, "Come down to attack the Midianites. Cut them off at the shallow crossing of the Jordan River at Beth Barah." So all the men of Ephraim did as they were told. They captured Oreb and Zeb and Zeb, Zeb, and into Midianite commanders, killing. They captured blah blah blah. The two Midianite commanders, uh, killing Oreb at the rock of Oreb, and Zeb at the winepress of Zeb. And they continued to chase down the Midianites. Afterward, the Israelites brought the heads of Oreb and Zeb to Gideon, who was by the Jordan River. Gideon kills Zebah and Zalmunna. Yeah. The people of Ephraim asked Gideon, "Why have you treated us this way? Why didn't you send for us when you first went to fight the Midianites?" Then they argued heatedly with Gideon. But Gideon replied, "What have I accomplished compared to you? Aren't even the leftover grapes of Ephraim's harvest better than the entire crop of my little clan of Abiezer? God gave you victory over Oreb and Zeb, the commanders of the Midianite army. What have I accomplished compared to that?" When the men of Ephraim heard Gideon's answer, their anger subsided. Gideon then crossed the Jordan River with his 300 men, and though exhausted, they continued to chase the enemy. When they reached Succoth, Gideon asked the leaders of the town, "Please give my warriors some food. They are very tired. I am chasing Zebah and Zalmunna, the kings of Midian." But the officials of Succoth replied, "Catch Zebah and Zalmunna first, and then we will feed your army." So Gideon said, "After the Lord gives me victory over Zebah and Zalmunna, I will return and tear your flesh with the thorns and briars from the wilderness." This is feeling like a foreshadow, because Jesus had his flesh torn with the thorns and briars from the wilderness. But dang, I didn't know Gideon could go hard like that. From there, Gideon went up to Peniel, yeah, and again asked for food, but he got the same answer. So he said to the people of Peniel, "After I return in victory, I will tear down this tower." By this time, Zebah and Zalmunna were in Karkor with about 15,000 warriors. All that remains of the allied armies of the east, for 12,000, had already been killed. Sorry. All that remained of the allied armies of the east, for 120,000, had already been killed. 120,000 warriors in their allied army had already been defeated by about 300, and some of the Ephraim villagers. Gideon circled around by the caravan route of east of Noba and Jogbeha, taking the Midianite army by surprise. Zebah and Zalmunna, the two Midianite kings, fled, but Gideon chased them down and captured all their warriors. After this, Gideon returned from the battle by way of Heres Pass. Then he captured a young man from Succoth and demanded that he write down the names of all the 77 officials and elders in the town. And Gideon then returned to Succoth and said to the leaders, "Here are Zebulun and Zalmunna. When we were here before, you taunted me, saying, 'Catch Zebah and Zalmunna first, and then we will feed your exhausted army.'" Then Gideon took the elders of the town and taught them a lesson, punishing them with thorns and briars from the wilderness. He tore down the tower of Peniel and killed all the men in the town. Then Gideon asked Zebah and Zalmunna, the men who you killed at Tabor, what were they like? Like you, they replied. They all had the look of a king's son. They were my brothers, the sons of my own mother, Gideon exclaimed. As surely as the Lord lives, I wouldn't kill you if you hadn't killed them. Turning to Jether, his oldest son, he said, kill them. But Jether did not draw his sword, for he was only a boy and was afraid. Then Zebah and Zalmunna said to Gideon, be a man, kill us yourself. So Gideon killed them both and took the royal ornaments from their necks, from the necks of their camels. Gideon's sacred ephod. So the ephod is a piece of clothing, right? Yeah. Just look at the apron that goes in the front. Okay. Or apron. Not apron, tunic is what I meant to say. The tunic that goes in the front. Then the Israelites said to Gideon, be our ruler. You and your sons and your grandsons will be our rulers, for you have rescued us from Midian. But Gideon replied, I will not rule over you, nor will my son. The Lord will rule over you. However, I do have one request, that each of you give me an earring from your that each of you give me an earring from the plunder you collected from your fallen enemies. The enemies being Ishmaelites. All wore gold earrings. Ishmaelites. Aren't they? Are they Ishmaels? Sons of Ishmael. The first son of Abraham. They were also the enemy? I was waiting for that to come into play. Because, they said that for generations you will be contentious with your family and all that. So this is just cousins on cousins at this point. Cousins on cousins. Wow. Okay. Gladly, they replied. They spread out a cloak, and each one threw a gold earring he had gathered from the plunder. The weight of the gold earring was 43 pounds, not including the royal ornaments and pendants, the purple clothing worn by the kings of Midian, or the chains around the necks of their camels. Gideon made a sacred ephod from the gold and put it in Ophrah, his hometown. But soon all the Israelites prostituted themselves by worshiping it, and it became a trap for Gideon and his family. This is the story of how the people of Israel defeated Midian, which never recovered. Throughout the rest of Gideon's life, about 40 years, there was peace in the land. Then Gideon, son of Joash, returned home. He had 70 sons born. 70? He had 70 sons born to him, for he had many wives. He also had a concubine in Shemek, who gave birth to a son whom he named Abimelech. Really? Abimelech, huh? This is an Egyptian. That was the Egyptian king that Abraham kept lying to. Right. So Gideon died. What does Abimelech even mean? What's the definition of it? Is it a popular name back then? Yeah, meaning, please. The name Abimelech is two Hebrew words meaning father and king. Evangelize as Abimelech means my father is king. It was apparently a common name, as several people, including some kings, were named Abimelech in the Bible. Yeah, okay, so it is a common name. Gideon died when he was very old, and he was buried in the grave of his father, Joash, at Ophrah, in the land of the clan of Abiezer. As soon as Gideon died, the Israelites prostituted themselves by worshiping the images of Baal, making Baal Bereth their god. They forgot the Lord their God, who had rescued them from all their enemies surrounding them, nor did they show any loyalty to the family of Jerubbaal, that is Gideon, despite all the good he had done for Israel. They got a little short-term memory situation going on here. All of Israel got some short-term memory problems. Like, come on, man. A Psalm of Solomon. Give your love to justice. Give your love of justice to the king, O God, and righteousness to the king's son. Help him judge your people in the right way. Let the poor always be treated fairly. May the mountains yield prosperity for all, and may the hills be fruitful. Help him to defend the poor, to rescue the children of the needy, and to crush their oppressors. May they fear you as long as the sun shines, as long as the moon remains in the sky. Yes, forever. May the kings rule by refreshing like spring rain on freshly cut grass. May the king rain be refreshing. Okay. Like the showers that water the earth, may all the godly flourish during his reign. May there be abundant prosperity until the moon is no more. May he reign from sea to sea, from the Euphrates River to the ends of the earth. Desert nomads will bow before him. His enemies will fall before him in the dust. The western kings of Tarshish. And other distant lands will bring him tribute. The eastern kings of Sheba and Sheba will bring him gifts. All kings will bow before him, and all nations will serve him. He will rescue the poor when they cry to him. He will help the oppressed who have no one to defend them. He feels pity for the weak and the needy. He will rescue them. He will redeem them from the oppression and violence, for their lives are precious to him. Long live the king. May the gold of Sheba be given to him. May the people always pray for him and bless him all day long. May there be abundant grain throughout the land, flourishing even on the hilltops. May the fruit trees flourish like the trees of Lebanon, and may the people thrive like grass in a field. May the king's name endure forever. May it continue as long as the sun shines. May all the nations be blessed through him and bring him praise. Praise the Lord God, the God of Israel, who alone does such wonderful things. Praise his glorious name forever. Let the whole earth be filled with his glory. Amen and amen. This ends the prayers of David, son of Jesse. Okay. And that is today. How do you spell savior? I mean, S-A-V-O-R. Save I-O-R. Yeah, okay. Y'all, we've accomplished day 72. And yeah, all I got to say is that there's some short-term memory going on. Like, this whole ebb of like, they get rescued by a judge. The judge fights to redeem them from their oppressor. They live in peace for blah 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 many of years. They live in peace for X amount of years. The judge dies, and then the Israelites forget. Basically, it's like the Israelites forget. Like, they just forget. And like, I almost want to say, oh, maybe like large amounts of time has passed, traditions get lost, blah 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 blah. But something is pulling at them, that they can continually turn to these gods who don't serve them, who haven't protected them, who haven't sheltered them, who haven't, like, they can continually serve these gods who grant them nothing. These empty, shallow structures, right? And yet they forget. They forget the God of Israel. They forget the God who rescued their ancestors time and time again, who did like miraculous things. They forget. Not only do they forget, they turn around and be like, well, if you were with us, why would we be suffering so much? To forget and then to turn around and cast blame? Oh, Lord, forgive us. I mean, forgive them. No, forgive us. Forgive us. Yeah. Y'all, have a good night. I'm gonna go rest up, and I look forward to seeing y'all tomorrow early in the day. Hopefully, no, I gotta do it early in the day. So I'll see y'all tomorrow pretty early. Get some rest. Not sleep, some rest. I don't care if y'all don't shut your eyes at all. There's a way to get rested without getting shut eye. Um, so find your way. Find your way to renew yourself specifically, because rest and renewal are so hard to come by, and they're precious. Needed and precious. Alright, y'all. Bye.